Welcome, guys. We're going to kick things off asking for blessing because the Lord does bless us. So, dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for all these fine people here. We thank you for the conclusion of Thrivalist. Thank you for the beautiful weather that you've given us today, Lord. And just ask for your hand of blessing on each and every person as they go home for safety, Lord, and that they would retain all the lessons and things that they learned throughout the weekend. We just thank you and praise you and trust you for that. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. All right, guys, welcome to Situational Awareness. We're just covering down on having a program for our awareness. So this is something that is developed from the military. It's actually came from the Marine Corps. Any devil dogs out there? Yeah, hoorah. All right, awesome. Good job. So thanks for representing, sir.
Thanks, you too.
The Marine Corps did add something of value to this world. Okay. So really the focus of this one, like with most of our training, is about the defensive context. So this is how we can stay ahead of the power curve so that we can have better solutions to threat response. So we want to make sure that we cut down our reaction time as minimal as possible so that it gives us most time that we possibly can, because time gives us options, and options means we might be able to save our lives or other people's more advantageously. So spot threats faster with greater certainty. That's going to pay big dividends for us. This is also something that we usually try to cover with our combatives curriculum. So we kind of set the context with all the things that we cover for defensive fighting. Our goal is to help equip people so that they can spot threats and avoid them altogether. But of course, if you can't avoid them, then we also have a lot of training covered for how you can actually kick butt and destroy the enemy that's trying to take you. So this is the baseline, and it can help. It can be across the board. This is applicable for anybody and everyone. So in this short lesson, for the next 45 minutes, we're going to cover 3 different levels of awareness. And this is just something to know about our capability of awareness. And then we're going to drop down into Cooper's color code and also look at the OODA Loop. For those of you who are familiar with it, you might not be familiar with the background story and all of the context that is surrounding the system. So this system is actually really simplistic. It's probably one of the most simple that you could apply in terms of situational awareness, having a system. Really all it is we're looking for anomalies. So we're trying to understand what is the baseline, what is the context of any given situation. Whenever we see something that's out of the ordinary or an anomaly, we want to be able to identify that early so that we can diagnose, is that a threat? If it is, we want to treat it appropriately, hopefully evade, get ourselves out of there. But if not, we are empowered to be able to take out the situation. So then we're going to look at reading behavioral and contextual cues. And this is something that's like an endless frontier. You can spend your entire life studying the language of body mechanics and behavioral cues, all these different things that our bodies are saying. And we'll look around at the crowd because everybody's always saying something. You just got to read the message correctly, right? Decisions in crisis. So once we understand that something is off, what are we going to do about it? There's different contexts, both military and civilian. What kind of persona? And that's the last thing that we're going to talk about, because you are projecting to other people. Whether we know it or not, our persona is saying something about ourselves, and that can either attract or hopefully dissuade a potential attacker. So we want to make sure that we have that together. Starting off with the 3 levels of situational awareness. First, perception. That is anybody and everybody who is not stuck on their phone, completely oblivious to all surrounding, right? Just being aware, just actually having your eyes and your ears and your senses open to things around you. It is key that we are trying to perceive everything around our immediate environment. After that, we have to understand, what does that mean? So this is the comprehension. We can misread situations. We can be aware that there's someone over there, but we're not aware of their evil intent, right? So perception is going to be making sense of the things that we have actually seen. And lastly, it goes to projection. So this is a 3-tiered structure. Projection is basically when you're accurately wargaming. You see something, you know what that means, and then you're able to diagnose and predict what is the likely outcome or the next step in that situation, because you're paying attention and you've seen these things before, and you're constantly thinking about, if this is a threat indicator, what would I do? What's the most likely thing that's going to happen next? So that will set us up for success if we are working through all 3 of these together. this goes hand in hand with Cooper's color code. Who's familiar with this? Some of you guys have probably seen this before. So Cooper's color code. This is helpful for us to understand our own body's response to stimulus and being aware of different things, because whenever we are under critical stimulus, whenever our lives are under threat, our bodies are naturally going to do different things. So we should understand both the degree of our own awareness, what condition we're in, as well as what stage we want to transcend into, but not go past. Starting off with white. So a lot of people will tell you in the space of self-defense that you should always be situationally aware. You should never be tuned out. But the problem is that's called paranoia. And so people that do that, they are so switched on that they can never switch off. And that's also a problem, right? So there are times that are absolutely appropriate. Whenever you are home and you are in a safe space, all right, but whenever there's no active threats, there's no other people that you don't know that could be a threat, it is fine to be tuned out and glued to that tube, or reading a book, or hanging out in a sauna or a hot tub. That's fine. That's good. It's good for you to be able to relax, all right? When we should switch on to yellow, where we are aware of our surroundings, this is calm. We're aware, we're cognizant, but we are not yet alarmed yet. We are just paying attention. And some things that we always do almost on a daily basis, like driving, if we are in condition white and not in yellow, then that's very dangerous, right? That's called distracted driving. So if we're tuned into something other than our constantly changing surroundings, then that's not healthy for anybody. But we're going to automatically jump into condition orange whenever we see something that could be a possible threat. So let's say you're driving down the road and you see it's late at night and you see some kind of movement in the bushes. All right, what is that? Is it a deer? Is it something else? Maybe a Sasquatch. Maybe you should pay attention. Out here, we have Sasquatch. Anybody seen Sasquatch? Totally could derail the entire thing. We could talk about that the entire time. But if you saw Sasquatch, you would definitely be like, what the heck is that? And that would be condition orange, where you see something that's out of ordinary. Bringing it back to a defensive context, if you are at a gas station, which is a transitional space, late at night, and you see somebody that just doesn't look quite right. Why are they there? They don't look like they have an outstanding reason. They don't look like it's legitimate. So you might have your attention raised for this individual, especially if you see in their hands or on their pockets or person something that could be construed as a deadly implement. Maybe you start to war game in your head. If this guy is out of place and he shouldn't be here and he looks like he could be carrying a weapon, what am I going to do if he steps up and asks me a question or takes a swing for me? Or you start wargaming it in your head. Red is that point in time where you see beyond a shadow of a doubt that this character is absolutely out for you. And now you know there is a contest for your life. So naturally, we're going to ascend into red. We need to make sure that we have proper mental. You guys were here for the other talk about it all starts with your mentality, right? The baseline is your mental conditioning. So if we are not tuned in, we can be pushed from red into the black zone, which means there's no like really intelligent response. You're going to be straight up fleeing for your life, or you could be locked up in a fetal position on the floor. Some people just do nothing and almost like pass out. Have you guys seen those goats that pass out? Right? They kind of have that kind of response in a critical situation. That is people who are pushed into the black zone. And this is people who have not thought about that particular outcome, or they haven't had stress inoculation. In the military, there's a lot of stress inoculation. You go through a lot of things really fast. And their goal is so that you don't freak out under critical duress, right? So we want to have accurate scenario-based training so that we do not push into the black zone, because nothing good happens there. The other thing that we want to key in on with Cooper's color code is not just our awareness, but what is our body doing? So there are going to be natural biological reactions under different threat stimulus with associated heart rates. So if you have resting heart rate, what is a good natural normal person's resting heart rate? 60? Oh yeah, that's super healthy. Absolutely. So if you are 60 to 80 resting heart rate, you're just chilling, you're relaxed, everything's good. In yellow, you are alert. So you're awake, maybe you've had a cup of coffee, but you're awake and you're paying attention, but you're not really stimulated yet. Orange is where you're going to see a bump. So now you are hyperfixating. You're going to have a little bit more blood rushing to the rods of your eyes so that you have, not that you lose your peripheral, but you're going to have more intense focus on what you are looking at. and you're going to see a jump up to maybe 115 beats per minute. So your heart is like prepped up, ready to go. If you jump into the red zone where you are like full on fighting, now we're gonna see a shift into like maybe 145 beats per minute. And what happens here is a few crucial things. So you're going to have vasorestriction. So your veins are going to tighten up whenever you jump into the red zone, which is part of our natural stimulus to preserve ourselves. I have a friend who was shot through the arm, and unlike the movies, he had almost no bleeding. All right, so a bullet passed clean through. Because he had jumped up into the red zone, his body shut down. There was no nicking of arteries. It was just went straight through. And so he had a flesh wound. It wasn't that bad. He wasn't bleeding out hardly at all because his body instantly jumped into the red zone. Something else that happens is also our gross, fine, and complex motor skills. We're gonna see whenever we have a threat stimulus, all right, our fine and complex motor skills. Anybody have a definition for that? Know what that means? What's the difference between a fine and a complex motor skill? It's all good. It's been a while, right? So fine motor skills are those things like whenever you're texting or you're using small textile, like dexterous motor skills. All right, a complex is whenever you have multiple moving parts. So if you were to have move your arm and take a step and tip your torso, that would be a complex motor skill. So this has to do with our kinesthetic awareness or our body in space and time. All right, all those things you used to do in sports, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Complex motor skills as well as fine. Gross motor skills are all big muscle movements. So these are things like bench pressing, squats, big muscle movement, like you were just kind of going meathead on it and your knuckle dragging moves. Thing about it though is that it's a different engagement. It's your quick twitch muscle fibers. It's not your slow twitch, which means that you can do a lot especially whenever you have an adrenaline dump, more than you would normally be able to do. So under critical duress, sometimes mothers who have had a baby taken from them or in a car wreck or a car rolls over them, they do something drastic. They'll actually like deadlift a small car. Something they never would have been able to do except under critical duress, boom, their gross motor skills through the roof, right? Whereas your complex and your fine motor skills like dialing 911, manipulating your safety on your handgun, doing all these small, fine dexterous stuff, they take a drop. So understand, without training, without some of these skills move to your habit instead of having muscle memory, if you have to think about it and perform it new on the day under critical duress, you're probably going to see a huge impairment of your standard functionality, except for your gross motor skills. Man, if you need to run like the wind, you can do that, all right? So just understand, these are pre-programmed into our body, and it has to do with the kind of area in which we are responding to threat stimulus. We can see that best through Cooper's Colors Code. All right, everybody tracking so far? Heck yeah. All right, I'm seeing heads up and down. That's good. That means I'm either doing my job or you guys are like, move on, dude. It's the day of the day. OODA Loop. Who's heard of the OODA Loop before? I know one of us have, two of us have. Okay. And the rest, that's awesome. Okay. So Captain Boyd was in the Vietnam War. He was a pilot. And basically what we had is we had a technological deficiency. Our pilots were going up against Russian-built MiGs with our F-4 Phantoms. So basically think we had a Volkswagen bus and they had a Ferrari in the sky, right? Well, how do you win in dogfighting up there? Well, it's all about maneuvering, baby. So you have to have either technological or mental advantage over your opponent. We did not have the technological advantage. So Captain Boyd from the U.S. Air Force, baby. All right, slightly prejudiced, sorry, man. So he outsmarted the enemy and gave his boys a tool and said, hey, this is the way we process information, the way we see a situation, the way we can actually arrive at a decision and take action. This is just the way that we all work. And he put terms on it and he gave them a system so that they could shortcut the enemy's cycle of operation, how they arrive at a decision, so that we could be on the action side and they could be on the reaction. This is how it works, okay? So every time we see something new, we have to observe it. So we have to be situationally aware. We have to have our eyes and ears switched on. We're looking around. We see something new. Let's say that scream of that little child back there was actually some terrorist extremist jumping out of a car screaming Ali Akbar, all right? It's happened before, could happen right now, right? So now we have to be aware. We can't just be zoned out thinking about whatever, as soon as we see that, we have to first observe, and then we come over and we look around, we orient. What is that? We have to make sense of what we just perceived, all right? After we've decided, we know what we're looking at, we oriented ourselves to it, we have to come to a decision of what we are going to do about it, all right? So this decision can take too long, but it is made much, much faster when we have already pre-decided what we're going to do in that situation. So if we are in the area of not just perception, but we're also trying to think critically about a situation, we're wargaming and we're thinking, hey, if then that. If this happens, I'm going to do this. If A, then B. Then you've already pre-decided what you're going to do when you see that threat stimulus. So this guy comes out and you've already decided this guy was looking shady in his car. I don't know why he's looking that way. I think I see a gun barrel. Why is he getting, if he gets out and then he jumps out, I'm doing my thing. I'm not sitting here thinking about what am I going to do. I've already pre-decided. And then you have to cross that threshold into action. So here's the thing. I have a friend who's a law enforcement trainer and he helps us out with classes. He was teaching a class some years ago and this lady, she was a senior citizen with her boyfriend. They were going to the bank to withdraw like a massive, 30,000, something like that. There's a lot of cash. They get held up, all right, broad daylight in the parking lot of this bank. And two robbers come on both sides of the vehicle, hold up her boyfriend, point a gun at her. She decides this is my time to shine, puts her hand inside of her purse, pulls out the gun, all right, when this guy was distracted because he was actually, the boyfriend was arguing over here. And so this guy is like, what's going on over here? So he's distracted and the lady's like, okay, I'm gonna, pulls the gun out, sticks it on the perp, but she can't cross the threshold from decision to action and actually pull the trigger. She didn't have it in her, which is one reason why I advocate, if you don't have it in you, just don't carry. Just understand that. So the robber is like, okay, I don't know what's going on. Sees the lady, bang, 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 shoots her up. The other guy shoots the boyfriend. Boyfriend dies. She goes to the hospital. Not a good situation, right? Because she couldn't cross the threshold of it. Now, if she had said, I know what I'm going to do, and you cross the threshold and you actually enact what you decided you were going to do, could have been a totally different outcome, right? This is the key with this. As soon as this is disrupted, and something new and unexpected happens, then you're going to be back at the starting point. You've observed something new. You have to orient yourself, determine, oh, that's what I saw, because denial, as you guys know, it's not just a river in Egypt, right? A lot of people are like, can't be. Guy's not sticking a gun in my face, right? No, you have to, yeah, he actually is, okay. And then you have to decide and you have to act. The way we can shortcut this is we have to do something unexpected to disrupt the enemy's OODA loop. And if we can, pre-decide those actions as much as possible. So we've already made the decision and we just enact the plan. That's it. So there's a way we can shortcut that process. That's what Boyd taught his men. This is something that has become standard across the defense industry for us to be aware of the way we process information, try to shortcut it on the enemy. All right. So that kind of takes us to Open Range, one of my favorite Westerns in modern history. If you guys haven't seen it, you now know what your homework is tonight, all right? So these two cowboys, they said a timeless truth about evil people with evil intentions. And he said, most of the time a man will tell you of his bad intentions if you listen and let yourself hear. Here's the thing. Most criminals who come up against us in today's society, they're not brain surgeons, right? And a lot of times they'll start off by stroking their ego, doing intimidation tactics, whatever it is. They're going to broadcast it either vocally or physically. It's going to manifest. And if you just let yourself hear, that is a big key so you can stay ahead of the power curve. The flip side of this is that body language is the majority of communication. It's not everything, but it's more than what we say and it's more than how we say it. So different people will give you different statistics, but everybody agrees it's the majority of communication, so we need to know how to use that. So those are some underlying principles. Now we're going to look at situational awareness, the system, the origin story of this. This man, anybody know who he was? Who said it? General Mad Dog Mattis. Yes, sir. Call sign Chaos. This man was the commandant of the Marine Corps. He is the head honcho. What happened is back in July of 2006, there was a surprising amount of not only IEDs exploding, also sniper attacks, all right? So basically, the only thing that we had before there was some kind of an ambush was not a lot, okay? Not anything that the Marine Corps had trained to previously. All of their training, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, up to that point, was mostly when there's an ambush, this is how we react to contact. This is when there's something, this is what we do on the backside of that. They didn't have anything like, hey, before there's an ambush, you might see a footprint on the trail that you shouldn't have seen. You might have seen a wire over here. The experience came from the battlefield. There was no training beforehand. And so a lot of guys were behind the power curve. They're overseas. They're getting ambushed. They're getting exploded. We have mass casualties. And he said, this is no bueno. We have to come up with some kind of formal system so our boys can stay ahead of whatever's out there. And they're not just reacting. They are acting with information. So he ordered a program to be proactively spotting threats before they happen. That has been termed the combat profiling system. Also, they added tracking components, so it's combat profiling and tracking, but we're not going to cover the tracking today. All right, so that created the system. Like I started off with, this system is extremely simple in its conception and the idea. All we need to know is what's normal. If you guys look around right now, there is a standard, there is a normal in everything that we can draw attention to at Thrivalist. So we need to understand what's the baseline. What's normal for this area, for this time of day, for this event. As soon as we understand what's normal, then we can identify anything that is above or below that baseline, also known as anomalies. Now, if it's above the baseline, it's something that's there, should not be there. If it's something below the baseline, something should be there, but it's not. All right, and this can be a little bit harder to spot sometimes, but just as crucial. After we've identified something's off, we need to have a bias for action because there's no good understanding something bad's coming, it's right here, now it's staring me in the face. If you didn't do anything about it, it's not doing anybody good, right? So understand what the baseline is, identify the anomalies, and then have a bias for action. That's what it is in clear, simple steps. Now, how we're looking at that situation, how we set the context, what is the baseline when we're talking about, you can look at in several different modes or functions. This system breaks it down into 6 different parts. So we're gonna break these all apart. Starts off with atmospherics. What is the environmental mood? How would you describe that? What's the norm there? Geograpics, the location importance, and we're gonna kind of dive into what that really means. Kinesics, which is a fancy word for body language, what we're all saying something, right? We just need to be able to read that correctly. Biometrics, what is our automatic body responses? We're going to do things under different stimulus, and that kind of tells a story. Proxemics, which is interpersonal distancing. Everybody naturally does this, but you can kind of read a situation a little bit better if you're paying attention to this. And we also have iconography, the symbols. Everybody's wearing some kind of a symbol, and that tells a story as well, ideology at least, all right? So we're gonna look through all 6 of these. There's a test at the end. Remember each one of these, all right? Atmospherics, the first one is the environmental mood. This is what's the standard condition at the playground on a Saturday afternoon. Fair weather right now.
Busy.
It's busy. Okay.
Or it could be quiet.
All right. If you're depending on the park, right? What's the activity level? Probably busier than the rest of most days of the week. How much noise do you expect? Almost like what we have now. You have little kids running around, screaming, yelling, laughter, people talking. You hear some noise, dogs, right? There's animal activity. What's the lighting condition for that time of day? This mostly returns to like inside of buildings. And what's the predominant emotion? What's the standard thing at a park? Yeah. Laughter, stress, happy. All right. If you see somebody who is not engaged in any activities, and maybe, let's say, an older man, all right, kind of a creepy look, all right, and he's inside of this van that has no tags, no stickers. No, it's just a blank van. And he's like watching these kids that are clearly not his kids. Does that give you warm and fuzzies, or is that kind of out of place? It's out of place. And we can clearly see that, but we're putting terms to this because that is outside of the norm of the environmental mood. If you were at Costco right now, what's the standard activity for a Monday afternoon at Costco? Okay, there you go. So holidays, that's gonna have a difference. Let's say it was actually Walmart and it's Black Friday. What kind of activity level you expect?
Chaos.
Chaos. Okay, what's the predominant emotion?
Stress.
Stress. You keep coming back to stress. Do we need to talk or something? What else? Hurried. Yeah. Yeah. Selfish. Anybody say greedy? TVs rolling out the door. What else? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's say it looked like it was Black Friday, but it's not a holiday. It's a random Tuesday. What do they know that you don't know? That's what we should be asking ourselves. Anybody gone through a major store after a major upheaval, maybe a hurricane or tornado? Or what's the difference there? What do you see? Empty shelves. You see panic. Same thing if we were to see like a worldwide pandemic. Yeah, stress. We're coming right back to it, aren't we? Man, like a magnet. Absolutely. My wife and I were down at Georgia during Hurricane Helene earlier last year. And the only store that had backup generators was Walmart. All right. It was not a great trip. I don't recommend it. It was interesting. Man, everybody's hygiene just takes a dump in I don't know why. It was a utter chaos and mess. But the point here is that there's going to be a norm. So whenever we see a change in activity, I'm going to draw an example to this really quick. So suburbia America, one of my in-laws' oldest brothers was in Midtown, Texas a few years back, and he was driving home from a standard shift at work. He had his kids in the back, and he's in suburbia America on the streets, and his only instinct was it was odd because there was not the normal traffic. He couldn't hardly see anybody on the roads, okay? So he goes to his living room, turns on the TV, and they're broadcasting, hey, there was an active shooter on the same streets he was just on just moments before. His only pre-event indicator or cue was a lack of activity from the norm. So this is a big one that stands out. Whenever we're talking about the atmosphere or the environmental mood or what the standard is, who's seen We Were Soldiers? Mel Gibson. If you haven't, add it to the list. You guys have more homework, all right? There's one point where it comes up to the battlefield and his young lieutenant is like, what's wrong, sir? He says, nothing's wrong, son, that's what's wrong. Everybody like starts shooting into the bushes and the entire jungle comes alive with Viet Cong and everybody starts rushing them, right? Because his cue was like, it's quiet. That means they're about to do a sneaky attack. It's not right. So sometimes the only thing we see is a lack of activity from the normal. Also, we need to consider what is the location or the geographics telling us. Because there's going to be different standards at different places. Most importantly, there should be a distinction between what are known as anchor points and habitual areas. So habitual area is like the playground. It's like Walmart. Anybody can be there basically any time of day. There's no standard. There's nobody to keep you from coming through that door. But what's the difference between that and Costco? We were just talking about. Why can't anybody just go into Costco? You have to have a card. They've really cinched down on that. I've tried so many different tactics. They're getting good, all right? But if you, because my wife has a card, I don't have a card, all right? So not being a total screw. No. See, they got a whole ID notification right there. The face populates and they're like, excuse me, that person isn't with you. They're tightening down. It's good stuff. So that is an anchor point, unless you have the membership card, right? Same thing for military bases. Same thing for like prison facilities, detention facilities, all of those. These are anchor points, all right? Your house, actually, that's an anchor point. Is anybody welcome any time of day? Nope. Darn right. You have to have an anchor point that is where you live, and there's also other points where you could be. Here's the thing though. So take this. This is a bridge in Spokane. What do you expect to see there? Yeah. What else? Uh-huh. Anything else? Empty syringes, trash, yeah, all the above, right? So something to keep in mind is that it could be a temporary anchor point. So criminal gangs will have different areas where they set up and they are selling their stuff and they control, and that is their hub. If you walk up that street and you do not belong there, somebody's going to ask you some questions, right? But that could be only during certain hours of the night. So keep this in mind. This could be temporary anchor points. Also, we want to tie in the idea of natural lines of drift. Who's familiar with this?
With what?
Natural lines of drift, pathways, natural patterns of transit. So we as humans, just like any other animal, we're going to be habits of creature and comfort. Sorry, creatures of habit. It's late in the day. I need to drink water. Okay. And comfort. So who here today climbed up that hill to get here? I didn't either. Actually, I took the highway to the other road and they got up to the driveway, and that's how I got here. And everybody here is probably going to leave the same way back to where you're going next. Where you're going next to eventually your anchor point of your home later tonight. So this is something to keep in mind because your habits of life is something that can be studied by other people, criminal. This is why in other countries, especially the military are told, hey, if you're going off base, do not take the exact same pattern, the exact same route at the exact same time of day every day, because what's going to happen? You're susceptible to ambush at that point, right? So if your enemies are trying to collect data on you, they could try to track you physically back to your location. This has happened to me and several people that I know, not because we have any kind of influential position, but just because we frequented the wrong stores, and which, in case you guys were wondering, it was actually just a precious metal store, and people were like casing us to see if they could take that from us. Be advised, people are evil out there and they might try to follow you back to your home. So if you are using natural lines of drift back to your home and you're not aware of surveillance, you're not using any counter surveillance techniques, you're not just checking your six and seeing if it's the same people and does that make sense? These are things that the enemy criminal elements are aware of and they use to exploit each and every day. In the military, whenever we understand other enemies' movement patterns, that's whenever we can set up an ambush. So it's the same thing in civilian sector. Understand that your enemy is aware of this too. We need to know how these break down. Usually, people will go from their anchor point, use a natural line of drift to a habitual area, conduct their business, and back to their anchor point, wherever that is. However, it's those transit areas or those transitional spaces which are the most susceptible to ambush. So keep that in mind. All right, moving on to kinesics or body language. All right, so everybody's always saying something. We just have to read that correctly. So I'm going to highlight this man in green right here. Don't move, sir. All right, just hold what you got. Everybody, I want you to highlight this guy. Tell me, what kind of body language is he protruding right now? What is he saying with his body? That could be. All right.
His clothes not open to,
Okay, why do you say that?
because he's like shutting everybody out.
That could be. Okay. So some people do have a self-soothing kind of posture, kind of movement pattern right here, or it could be that they're closed off, right? What else could this mean by crossing your arms?
Focus.
Yeah, he could be relaxed. He could be cold, 100%. Could mean completely opposite things, which is why the most important thing whenever you're assessing somebody's body language is that you take it all in concert. If I took just one thing, I'm going to read it out of context. But now we also look at his crossed ankles, his feet are forward, he's leaning back. What else does that say?
Relax.
Oh, good. So that's a good thing, right? Okay, so he's relaxed. We could categorize that as comfortable, all right? Is he interested? Or would you say he's uninterested? His eyes are open. That's a good thing. Hey, yeah. And he's paying attention over here. If he was looking off every other, yeah, you could say maybe he's uninterested, right? Dominant versus, yes, sir. Dominant versus submissive. This is where basically in rule of thumb, the more space that you occupy, the more dominant your behavioral cues are. The less space that you occupy, the more submissive you are. All right. So if we were to classify in these 3 different categories, we could say that he's exuding comfortable, interested, and dominant cues, which is perfectly fine. If this were to change, all right, and someone were to walk up behind him, bend over him, and then start speaking something into his ear, and he changed his behavioral cues and everything started closing up and he showed uncomfortable, very interested, and submissive body posture, and this was a change from the standard, that just told me something about the situation. It's changed. And who is he? What's his role in this situation? That's whenever we can start to read situations, is whenever we see the change from the baseline, all right? And there's a whole lot of study that goes into this, but on a surface level, we can categorize it in those 3 different ways. Everybody tracking so far? Awesome. We're gonna race through this because we're running out of time. But basically, we also wanna check out their automatic body responses. These are things that we can't control. We're talking about whenever you are blinking, a lot of times people don't control that instinctively. Have you guys ever seen the lie test? Seen any video of Clinton ever? A lot of blinking. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Anyway, don't get me started. Sweating, something we can't control. If somebody's sweating, what could that mean?
Nervous.
You could be nervous. What else?
Hot.
They could be hot. Absolutely. What else?
Diabetic.
Yes, it could be a medical condition. Absolutely. All right. Same thing with whenever somebody's shaking or trembling. A lot of different things, right? We have to take these in concert. We don't want to read one cue out of the situation. Flushed red. Whenever you see somebody, all the blood rushes to their face. What does that mean?
Embarrassed.
Yeah, or anger or embarrassed. Either way, whenever that happens, you know, if you were teasing somebody, you nailed it, all right? They don't have to say anything. They just told you. If you ever see a pulsating vein, right? And that's just like bump, 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 bump. You guys ever seen that in somebody? I've seen it in a superior, and it's a great time to use your de-escalation skills, all right? If somebody just turns straight white, what does that mean? All the blood rushed out of their face and out of their extremities to their vitals, and what kind of a reaction is that?
Shock.
Shock, fear. This is some kind of a stress stimulus, which is a shock response, right? So dilated constricted pupils, right? So if our eyes are blowing up and we have more of a, more pupil showing, what does that mean? Could be. Okay, so if you're restricted, that means that you're focused in on something. It could be a stress response, okay? Or if they're blown up, that usually means that you are looking at something that you love. Like I think about Hallmark movie. Cues in towards that face, and the guy's like, I love you. His eyes are big as saucers, right? If he's a good actor and a Hallmark, just like, sorry. Okay, so also, what's the other times whenever our eyes are either getting bigger or smaller? Okay, yes, so reaction to light. Yeah, so that's the way it's built, just like a camera lens, right? Are we taking in more light? So somebody just stepped into a bright room from a dark outside. What do you expect to see? Constricted pupils. Vice versa is also true. If there's no light change and you see this happen, you could be talking to somebody and they just show several of these cues as they look at something. What are they staring at? All right. Now, the opposite's also true. If everybody's having one response and one person is absolutely calm and showing none of the above, also tells a story, okay? So these are things that we can't control, and they help tell that story. Also true with proxemics, which is interpersonal distancing. Again, we're going back to Man in Green. What's your name, sir?
Joe.
Hey, Joe, you're being awesome. Thank you for being an example. So Joe is sitting next to someone really close, right? Whereas a lot of other people are spread out. So we see pair, we see pair, we see pair. Why are people sitting close to each other? Kind of obvious, right? That they're inside of that intimate zone, the closest zone that you can be. Now, if you're just friends, it's a little bit more of a spacing. It's not quite up close and personal. So you could say, describe the relationship of the people in the top left. Romantic. People have told me in the past, there are people thinking about getting married, and the people down there, they've already been married, man. All right, so, but the proxemics tells the story, right? And whenever this changes, so whenever if you were under a lethal threat and there's multiple bad guys, all right, proxemics, or the way that they are associating with each other, their spacing kind of tells you a story. Who is the person in the foremost, the forerunner? Who's the leader? Who's the top dog? The other guys are going to react according to him. If you have an officer step into with a bunch of enlisted guys, everybody changed posture and moves accordingly. So these are things that we can keep in mind. That stranger distance is a little bit further. It's kind of like that safe space for COVID, 6 feet or what. It's just past that step. You have to take a step to be able to touch the person. So stranger danger, these are all things that can change culturally, but universally across the board, you're going to have your closest space, your friend space, and your stranger space where you're going to be comfortable of having them. So what's your name, sir?
Rick.
Rick, and I'm Michael. So you notice like right here, we're pretty comfortable at like this. But if I was like, I have never met Rick before and I'm like all up in his chili right here, either one of two things is going to happen. He's going to change his comfortable and dominant cues, or it tells a story. These guys know each other, all right? So you can start to read the situation a little bit better. Also, we need to be advised about proxemic push versus pull. So if you guys have not seen the movie Act of Valor, raise your hand. Haven't seen it? More homework, guys. Okay, so Act of Valor is kind of... I know, right? But this is a cool movie because it portrays real acts of valor that our servicemen have done in times of war. And it's portrayed by real Navy SEALs, all right? Not great actors, great operators, but the movie's absolutely worth watching. Here's the main bad guy. He's using this tactic, understanding this proxemic push versus pull, because his target was the CEO character, and he decided he was actually going to target him by leveraging his love for his son. So he's going into the school. He's a man. He has all this explosive devices in an ice cream truck. Why? Because kids love ice cream. He knows that the CEO, his target, loves his son. So he pulls this ice cream truck loaded down with improvised explosives into the school, gets past the security, and he's jumping out. He's playing. He's like Mr. Ice Cream Man with all the kids running around asking for ice cream. As soon as the CEO follows his son to the ice cream truck, Mr. Ice Cream Man is walking away from his truck. Weird. Not right. And he actually got a funny look from this guy right here in the background that you see, the security guy who didn't catch it fast enough, because as soon as he rounds a corner, they all go up in smoke, right? So that's an illustration of how the enemy can use this tactic against us. We need to be understanding the way that this works, right? So keep that in mind. Iconography, symbols, all right? So the power of symbols. Anybody know what this flag is?
I don't want to know what it is.
Gays for Palestine. There's no Palestine for gays flag in the history of the world. They hate them. They throw them off of buildings is actually what they do. Yeah, it's a very confused. So if somebody's sporting that symbol, kind of shows you where their allegiance lies, right? It kind of shows you their mentality or their lack thereof. Okay, you also have, if somebody has an American flag and a USMC, I gotta shout out to the Marine Corps here. USMC, American flag, who lives there? Yeah, hopefully no faker, almost guaranteed. That guy served in the Marine Corps. He's like, don't tell me about former Marines, son. It's just Marines and Marines, right? Yeah, he knows what that's about. So flags, graffiti. What is graffiti if it's not artwork?
An eyesore.
Yeah, it's an eyesore. What is it? It's a message. Basically, it's the sign. It's like a lot of criminal underworld's sign and symbology for this is our turf, this is where it extends, this is our AO, area of operations. So if we understand what those mean, then we're not going to walk into a situation in the bad part of town unawares. These are messages. As long as we can read them, we can know what they mean. MS-13. What does that mean? What gang is that? One of the bad ones. Yeah, where are they coming out from? El Salvador. What do you have to do to be in one of those gangs?
Kill somebody.
You have to have had to kill somebody. Absolutely. Sometimes you can also see teardrop tattoos on their cheek. And that's their last body count or how many times they've gone to prison since their last tattoo. Bumper stickers. All right, so we've got two versions of coexist down here. Also tell a story, right? So one you see from the Seattleites and the other one is your redneck neighbor. Symbolic clothing. So everybody is going to be sporting some kind of clothing. And a lot of times those come with logos, with symbols, with things that people will adopt in their ideology. So if I see somebody walking around with a gold chain and a big cross on it, and they're wearing a muscle shirt and shorts, what kind of person would sport that?
Gang member.
Yeah, very possibly, right? If somebody is got a I Love Palestine backpack tag and they've got earrings and they've got tattoo with a half crescent and a goat coming out of their neck, like what kind of character is that? All tells a story. They're probably Satanists, but whatever it is, all of these things help tell the story, and usually there's subconscious messaging. It's not something, most people don't put on a disguise each and every day pretending to be somebody else. They're proud of who they are, and they exhibit that in their clothing, right? I paid for this logo, man, right? So you guys got to remember that. These are things that help tell that story as well. All right. Those are the 6 different aspects. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid this character right here. We do not want to become roadkill. We want to be someone who sees the threat coming, just like Proverbs says, wise man sees the problem ahead and he hides himself. He doesn't become this character. So if we see the problem and you're just like, hold what you got, the worst thing that you can possibly do in a crisis situation is what? Nothing. Yeah, the worst thing you can do is nothing. A bad decision is better than no decision at all. And an imperfect solution carried out now with vigor is better than the perfect solution 5 minutes from now when it's too late, right? So do something. Hopefully it's a good thing, but try to avoid paralysis by analysis.
How do you correct that?
How do you correct it? What?
Analysis paralysis.
Basically, you have to take decisive action whenever you see something. So your cue is, generally their rule is whenever you see 3 things that are off, like we read somebody's body behavior, it doesn't match the situation. Now that changed, it's becoming more aggressive. And I see something that tells me this guy might have lethal intent. All of those things together is like, I'm going to do something. What do? We're going to talk about that in a second. But do something. Don't just sit there and be like, bad situation, worse, much worse, and then it's almost too late, right? Freeze, fight, or flight. This is your stress stimulus. This is what we're going to be pushed into. So hopefully you do the right thing, which is what?
Freeze.
Yeah, that's the wrong thing, right? That's the one thing we never want to do. Hopefully we can run. We can flee. We can avoid that situation altogether. The best thing to do to prevail is to not get in the fight, right? The easiest dragon to slay is the one you don't have to. Just miss him altogether. But if that's not an option, then go to fight. Freezing is never a great choice. That's whenever the worst outcomes happen. You need to act quickly, though, to be able to stay ahead of the power curve. So that's why we have this slide here, our critical action power curve. In any situation, this could be a half a second, it could be a half an hour. It depends, right? But at every point in time, if you are situationally aware, you should be able to see something that tells you some kind of pre-event cue, something's off, something's not quite right, and that gives you a time to be able to react to it. You guys are familiar with the Hamas attack on Israel 2 years ago in October? Okay, so there is footage of some of those kids at some kind of festival rally where they're playing a bunch of music. They could see not only a crap ton more missiles and rockets being fired than standard. Now, Israel gets hit a lot, right? But they're seeing 10 times as much as they usually do, and they see paragliders in the distance. We have camcorder footage 45 minutes before the first person gets shot. 45 minutes is a hell of a long time for reaction. It could be a very long, drawn-out situation, or it could be a split second where you have the time to be able to make a choice. Nobody knows when your next situation is going to be, but there's going to be a point in time whenever you do not react that is going to be eventually too late. So that's why we're trying to advocate for early action. Do something, do it fast with vigor now before you don't have the time. All right, so decisions in crisis, what do? So military, a little bit different than civilians. For civilians, hopefully we're in a situation that is not deadly and we can actually de-escalate it. However, for the context of what we're talking about today, if you are abiding by the stupid rule, anybody know what the stupid rule is? Don't go stupid places at stupid times with stupid people, or something stupid is going to happen, right? So abide by that rule, right? And most likely the situation is not going to be able to be de-escalated if you have a legitimate life-threatening situation. Hopefully you can just avoid it. If you can't, you're going to have to fight to stop the threat. And that's what we advocate for, not leaving your fate in the hand of some merciless individual, all right? So, postscript, shoot him in the face, drop him like a bad habit. Okay, legally I said stop to fight the threat. And that is the biggest point that you guys need to take away from this, is that whenever there is no other option, fight until that threat is completely eliminated. Make sure that your fate is in your hands and not the opponent's, not the enemy's, right? So to help us with that, what decision are you going to do? Standard operating procedures. So this could be applied to you as an individual. It could be applied to you as a couple or whoever your team is. If A, then you're going to do B. If this thing happens, we're going to react to contact this way. So in the Marine Corps, do you guys do battle drills? Everybody knows if somebody says contact right, what's everybody going to do? All the same thing.
Right.
That's the point. If you have two people and you have multiple threats coming up, and I set the standard operating procedure that I'm going to take, if I'm on the left, I'm going to address the left going to right, and the other person is going to go from right to left. We meet in the middle, then we all know who are we taking out first? Who are we going to address the threat? How are we going to apply that situation? If our standard operating procedure is, honey, you take the kids and run to the car, get the heck out of here, I'll see you on the other side. She knows if I say, hey, get out of here, it's not like a, what? What's happening? No, like we already talked about this, right? We're cutting off that time. Standard operating procedure is a way to minimize your reaction time in the moment. What's up?
I said it's all the stuff you hate in the movies.
Big facts. Persona, the way we exhibit ourselves to others. They are absolutely paying attention. Hunters stalk prey. Are you prey? That's right. Hey, good answer back there, ma'am. Missed you. Hey, glad you made it for the end. So you could have one of three standard personas. Number one, you could have this lady who is a soft target. Not because she is a lady predominantly, but because she is what? Not paying attention. All right. She's not walking around confidently aware of her surroundings. She is showing herself as to be weak, right? Someone that a predator is going to see and smell blood and say, that could be a target. You could have this character right here. Who is he? I don't know. I can't even remember what he looked like. He blended into that whole situation. He didn't stand out at all. He basically looked like anybody here. That not anybody, but like somebody that I can't remember. The gray man does not stand out of this situation. If you were to try to pick him out of a crowd, you couldn't, because he just looks like the crowd, all right? There's nothing about his, the way he behaves or the way he carries himself or what he has or what he's wearing that are overly descriptive. This way you can stay below the baseline and not be on the radar of somebody else. That is a possible situation. It is a good tactic, because if that is you and you are the most dangerous man in that room, but you don't draw attention to yourself and you don't look like it, okay, if the bad guys ever do pick on you and you turn the tables, now you have speed, surprise, and violence of action working for you, kind of like what we talked about earlier. So that's a big plus. Otherwise, you could take this man's persona, The Rock. Can I hear it for this man? He is a hard target. Somebody goes up against him, they know it's going to be a fight, and it's going to be, all right, a very, very difficult fight. So you could pick your persona. You're going to naturally exhibit one. You can adopt anything that you want. But understand, there are pros and cons, all right? If you adopt this and somebody is taking down a gas station and you are there, anybody who's already decided they're going to take down the gas station, they see you and they're like, he's going to be a problem. We're going to have to deal with that first, right? So understand, there are pros versus cons. Either one of these have advantages and disadvantages, can be good options. Soft target is never the right choice for anybody, unless you're luring them into an ambush. I don't know. That's up to you. Summary. All right. So everybody's favorite slide. We talked about at the very beginning of this, there are 3 levels of situational awareness. Who remembers what they are? Dead silence. I love it. Okay. So first one was being perception, right? We are looking around us. We are aware. The second one was actually making sense of that and understanding what we're seeing. And the third level is actually projecting and wargaming and knowing what's going to happen next to a greater degree, right? So there are levels to this. Just because you're aware doesn't mean that you're actually making sense. You're actually seeing it for what it is. But we want to take it to the next step. We want to actually be able to predict the future to some degree. Cooper's color code. How does that help us? What is it? Condition white is what?
Like, tuned out.
You are tuned out. Yes, ma'am. Kind of like that person back. No, I'm kidding. You're good. Okay, so you're not paying attention. Yellow, you're paying attention. What's orange? You've seen a threat and you're cued into it. So you're focused on that. What's state condition red? You are now in that fight stimulus. You are responding to that, and we would never want to go into condition black. How do we stay out of it? Training, right? Having that good training to be able to back that up. And then we looked at the OODA Loop, observe, orient, decide, and act. We kind of ran through that. We want to make sure that we are on the action phase, on the reaction. The system, what kind of system we were looking at is essentially, in every context, there's a baseline, there's a standard. We want to understand what is that baseline so we can see either there's things above that baseline or below it. Something that is there that should not be, or something that isn't there, but it should be. Whenever we see that, we take presumptive actions, right? All right, cool. And then we look through rehating the behavioral and contextual cues. So there are 6 different things. Who remembers one of them? What were the 6 different lenses we looked at through that situation? One of them is the environmental mood, right? Costco versus Walmart, depending on that time of day, the activity, light, right? All those things. What was another one? Environmental mood.
Symbols and
Yes. An iconography. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Symbols tell a story. What else? Yes. So basically our body language tells a story. Also, you have automatic responses, things we can't control, right? We have all of those. And we also need to keep in the importance of location, natural lines of drift, anchor points versus habitual areas, etc. All right. If this is all new to you, we're going to hit some resources on the back end. Decisions in crisis. What are the 3 things that we could do that are appropriate? Hopefully, A, avoid it altogether. Or if we could, de-escalate it, right? If we can't do that, then what should we do? Fight to stop the threat. Yes, sir. All right. And then we looked at persona. There's 3 basic different kinds of persona. You guys all now know what to do. Be the rock, right? Okay. So if this was new to you guys and you want some more resources, there is the original source document profiling and tactical tracking from U.S. Marine Corps. Thank you, guys. Somebody actually wrote an entire book on this from which this PowerPoint was derived called Left of Bang. It is a great book. You can find that on Amazon. The guy who wrote that book also created an online source called the CP, or Combat Profiling Journal. Look it up. It's got more intensive training. Also, that's me winking at you. This is us. If you guys have more questions on any of this stuff, we are here to be an asset for you guys. We have our contact info over here. If you want to jump on our email newsletter, you can absolutely add your email there. If you don't worry about it. We've got all kinds of things, including 2 classes coming up, just so you guys are aware, June 13th and 14th. This is a Friday and Saturday, Tactical Carbine 1 and 2. So if you guys have a fighting rifle and you want to get to better know how to utilize that, definitely come to these classes. We're even going to throw in a bonus night vision / white light course in the mix between those 2. So if you're coming to both, you get to attend that for free. If you don't have night vision, it's good introductory to that. So anyway, that's been us. We've been ARC. You guys have been great. Each and every one of you, I'm proud of you. All except for, I'm kidding again. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your time. I'm going to hand it back over to Ben.
Well, that's all I have for this video. Bang around that bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos come out. Call us on the hotline if you have comments or questions and want to be featured in an upcoming video. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe. Check us out on the website, and we'll see you guys on the next one.